The axe wound in the main gate was a minor thing. A few splinters of pine, a shallow gouge no deeper than my thumb. I ran my gauntlet over it. The work of some farmer panicked at the news, trying to get his family back out before we sealed it. I did not blame him. Fear makes people stupid. We had stopped him, of course. Stenvar Winterborn put the flat of his own axe against the man's chest and walked him back 20 paces. No blood shed. Order maintained. That was my job. We called the settlement Carthwayston Crossing. It was not on any map. A month ago, it was just a collection of logging huts and a half-built longhouse south of the river. A place for men working the timber contracts for Whiterun. Now it was a quarantine, a place to put the sick from the villages dotting the plains. The sweats, they called it. A gift from Periite, the priest said. It started with a fever, then a shivering that could crack teeth, and then you just sweated yourself into a husk. Jarl Balgruuf, the Greater, a practical man, had wanted a solution that did not involve burning entire villages. So this place was born. My name is Hror Smoketrail. I served 2 tours with the Legion in the Great War. I know how to build a palisade and how to make men stand on it. When the Jarl's call went out for veterans to manage these places, I answered. It was good work. It was necessary work. The barricade was solid oak, 10 feet high, sharpened to points at the top. One gate reinforced with iron bands I had hammered myself. Inside, we had 300 souls, maybe more. Outside, we had the world. My job was to keep the 2 separate. Attius Varen, the Imperial quartermaster assigned by the Jarl, stood beside me, making notes on a clipboard. He was a man who believed in lists. He believed that if you could write a problem down, you could solve it. 3 new families arrived from Rorikstead this morning, he said without looking up from his parchment. 12 people, 4 showing. Symptoms. The sick ward is full. The sick ward is a tent, Hror. We can always add another tent. He finally looked at me. His face was pale, his eyes netted with red from lack of sleep. He was a good man. An organized man. The healers are managing. Colette says the fever breaks in 1 of every 5 if they get the potion in time. 1 in 5 is not a victory, Attius. It is better than none in 5, he shot back. He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Look, the supply wagon from Whiterun is due tomorrow. More tents, more potion reagents. Another healer from the Temple of Kinnereth. We just have to hold this place together until then. I nodded, turning my gaze from the gate to the settlement within. It was orderly. The healthy were housed in the finished huts. The sick were in the medical tents on the east side near the small stream we used for washing. Smoke rose from a dozen small cook fires. The sound was a low hum of life. People talking, a child crying, an axe splitting wood. It was contained. It was manageable. We were doing a good service here. We were keeping the sickness from spreading across the whole hold. It felt like duty. It felt clean. I walked the perimeter, a habit from my Legion days. The palisade was secure. The guards were alert. They were local boys mostly, sons of farmers who had seen too many of their own kin taken by the sweats. They understood the need for the wall. Stenvar Winterborn was their commander, a great bear of a Nord with a beard that reached his belt and a temper that matched. He was a housecarl from a minor lord's hall, loaned to the effort. His methods were direct. He saw the world as a nail to be hit with a hammer. We balanced each other. I provided the structure, he provided the force. He met me by the south tower. He was sharpening his axe on a whetstone, the rhythmic scrape of steel on stone a comforting sound. The gate is holding, I told him, for now. He spat a zeal, wad of brown tobacco juice into the dirt. They get hungrier, they will try again. A man with a starving child does not see a gate, he sees a cage. They are not starving, Stenvar. Attius has the food stores under control. Attius is a quill pusher. He thinks in numbers on a page. I think in bellies. I hear them rumbling. The rations are half what a working man needs. They are enough to survive. This is temporary. He stopped sharpening his axe and looked at me. His eyes were the color of a winter sky. Nothing is temporary when you are on the wrong side of the wall. I left him to his work and made my way to the medical tents. The smell hit me first. Sweat, yes, but also something else. Something sour and metallic like old blood. Colette Sienne was inside, her face illuminated by a single lantern. She was a Breton girl, barely 20, but her hands were steady and her eyes were ancient. She was grinding ingredients in a mortar, her movements precise and economical. Around her on cots of straw and canvas lay the sick. They shivered and moaned, their skins slick with a pale, greasy sweat. "Roar," she said, her voice a low murmur. She did not stop her work. "You should not be in here without a mask. I need to see the state of things. The state of things is the same as yesterday and the day before. We need more nightshade. We need more blue mountain flower. The wagon." "It comes tomorrow," I said, maybe too quickly. She paused, the pestle still in her hand. She looked at me then, truly looked at me, and I felt like a boy caught in a lie. Her gaze was sharp enough to cut. "You keep saying that. Attius keeps saying that. Does saying it make it true?" "It is scheduled, Colette. The Jarl would not abandon us. The Jarl has a whole hold to worry about. We are one camp of sick loggers and farmers. We are an acceptable loss." She went back to her grinding. "I have enough potion for 10 more doses. There are 42 people in this tent. You do the math." I had no answer for her. I stood there for a moment, watching the rise and fall of a dozen chests, listening to the chorus of rattling breaths. The air was thick with suffering. I felt useless. My walls and my guards could keep people in. They could not keep the sickness out. I left the tent, pulling the flap shut behind me, feeling the cool night air on my face like a blessing. The wound on the gate was a small thing. A splinter. I told myself that. I told myself it could be mended. The sun came up the next day looking angry and red. The supply wagon from Whiterun did not arrive. Attius Varen stood on the guard tower with me, staring down the empty road, his clipboard forgotten at his feet. The hum of the camp was different now. The low murmur had been replaced by a tense quiet. You could feel the questions hanging in the air. You could see it in the way people watched the gate. Hope was a resource, and ours was running low. "A delay," Attius muttered, more to himself than to me. "A broken axle, a lame horse. It could be anything." "Or it could be bandits," Stenvar said, joining us. "Or the sickness has reached the city. Or the Jarl has other priorities." He clapped a heavy hand on Attius's shoulder. "Your lists did not account for the world outside the walls, Imperial." Attius flinched but did not reply. He just kept staring at the road. I went down to manage the midday meal distribution. It was my policy to be there, to be seen. A leader shares the hardship, or he is no leader at all. The ration was a thin vegetable stew and a heel of hard bread. It was not much, but it was hot. The line was long and silent. No one met my eyes. They took their bowls, their faces grim, and retreated to their huts. They looked thinner than they had a week ago. Their clothes hung on them. Their eyes were sunken. A woman named Elin, the wife of the farmer who had tried to break the gate, stopped in front of me. Her bowl was empty. She had 2 small children hiding behind her skirts. "There is not enough," she said. Her voice was flat, without emotion. "It is what we have, Elin. We are all sharing the same. My boy has the shivers. He needs his strength. Take him to Colette. She will help him." She has no more potions. She told me this morning. She gave me a poultice of herbs. A poultice will not fight Periite. She took a step closer. Her eyes were burning. You promised us. You said this was a place of safety. It is, I said, my voice firm. The wall keeps you safe from the chaos outside. The wagon is just delayed. She laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. You have it backward, Legionnaire. The wall keeps the chaos in. She walked away. I watched her go, the feeling of every eye in the line on my back. The confidence I had felt a week ago, the certainty of my purpose, had drained out of me. It left a hollow space in my chest. I gave the order to the guards to cut the ration for the evening meal. We had to stretch the stores. I did not tell Attius. He would have wanted to write it down, to put it on a list. Some things are better left unwritten. That night, the first death happened outside the sick tents. An old man, a woodcutter named Bjorn, simply lay down by his fire and did not get up again. His family started wailing, a high, keening sound that cut through the night. It was a sound of pure grief, and it was infectious. Soon other cries joined it, a chorus of despair that echoed off our perfect, orderly walls. Stenvar wanted to take the body and burn it immediately. Panic is a disease, too, he growled. And it spreads faster than the sweats. I refused. He deserves his rights. His family deserves to mourn. There is no time for mourning, he roared, his face inches from mine. There is only survival. You and your legion rules. This is not the Empire. This is Skyrim. We are not soft. We argued for an hour, our voices low and vicious in the darkness. In the end, I won. Or I thought I won. We allowed the family to sit with the body until dawn. It was a mistake. I see that now. My compassion was a weakness. By morning, 2 more people in the neighboring huts were shivering. The fear Stenvar had warned me about had taken root. It was a cold, hard knot in the stomach of the camp. The healing potions tasted like ash in my mouth. Not that I was drinking them. Colette had none to spare, but the water from the well had a metallic tang and the bread was dry as dust. Everything felt wrong. The sun was too bright. It hurt my eyes. I spent most of the day in the shade of the watchtower, just watching. My job was no longer about maintaining order. It was about watching for the cracks. The first real crack appeared on the 3rd day after the wagon failed to show. A fight broke out in the food line. It was over nothing. A man thought another man had gotten another man larger piece of bread. It started with a shove, then a punch. Within seconds, a dozen men were brawling in the mud, their faces contorted with a rage that had nothing to do with bread. Stenvar's men waded in with axe handles. They did not try to separate the fighters. They just started cracking heads. I saw a man go down, his face a mask of blood. I saw another crawling away, his arm bent at an unnatural angle. It was brutal. It was efficient. The fight was over in a minute. Stenvar stood over the moaning bodies, his chest puffed out. That is how you keep order, Hroar, he said to me later. You remind them who holds the bigger stick. I did not argue. I just nodded. I went to my hut and looked at my hands. They were clean. They had not swung a weapon. And somehow that felt worse. I was an observer, a manager of violence. I started to see the camp differently. I was not protecting 300 souls anymore. I was guarding 300 animals in a cage. I started noticing things. The way the baker, a large Nord named Gunnar, watched the grain store. He had 2 sons, both strong as oxen. They could overpower the single guard posted there. I made a note to double the watch. I saw a Bosmer family, the Lightfoots, whispering by the western palisade. They were nimble. They could climb. I moved a patrol to cover that section more frequently. These were my people. A week ago, I would have shared a drink with Gunnar. I would have admired the Lightfoots for their quiet resilience. Now they were threats. Every person was a collection of potential dangers. The mothers with sick children were vectors of disease. The strong men were potential rioters. The old and the weak were just mouths to feed, a drain on our dwindling resources. My mind, trained by the Legion to assess tactical situations, was now turned inward against the very people I was supposed to protect. Attius Varan was falling apart. His lists were a mess of ink blots and crossed-out entries. He spent his days in the supply tent counting and recounting sacks of flour as if the numbers would somehow change. "There is only enough for 4 more days," he told me, his voice a dry whisper. "That is with the reduced rations. After that, there is nothing." "Then we butcher the pack horses," I said. He looked at me, his eyes wide with horror. "Butcher them? They are property of the Jarl's court." "The Jarl is not here, Attius, and his property is about to be eaten by starving people one way or another. My way is orderly. Their way will be a bloodbath." He sat down heavily on a crate of dried apples. "By the 9, what has this place become?" "It has become what it had to," I said. I did not feel any pity for him. His shock was a luxury we could no longer afford. I found Colette outside the sick tents burning soiled linens. The pyre cast flickering shadows on her face, making her look like a hag from a fireside story. Her hands were raw and chapped. She moved with the slow, deliberate motions of someone who had not slept in days. "The sweats have changed," she said, not looking at me. She poked the fire with a long stick. "The fever comes faster now, and the shivering, it is more violent. I saw a man break his own teeth yesterday. Whatever this strain is, it is stronger than the one we saw last week. Can you do anything?" "I can give them water. I can sing them songs my mother taught me. My medical supplies ran out 2 days ago. I am a bard now, Hror, a death singer." She finally turned to me. There were dark circles under her eyes. "Stenvar's men came by this morning. They wanted a list." "A list of what?" "The ones who will not recover, the ones whose fever is too high." He said they were making contingency plans. The cold knot in my stomach tightened. "I will speak to him." "Will you?" She gave a short, sharp laugh that held no humor. "Or will you look at his plan and see the logic in it? I see the way you watch people now, the way you count. You are not a protector anymore. You are a warden." She was right. I was a warden, and a warden's first duty is to the prison, not the prisoners. I walked away from her, the smell of burning cloth and sickness in my nostrils. I went to find Stenvar. I found him with his men handing out extra rations of mead. They were laughing and sharpening their blades. They were a pack of wolves, and they had smelled blood. "Stenvar," I said, my voice low. "We need to talk about the sick ward." He grinned, wiping mead from his beard. "Ah, yes, the contingency plan, good. I was hoping you were finally starting to see things clearly." He slung an arm around my shoulder, his strength immense. He led me away from his men toward the palisade. "The weak ones, Hror. They are a drain. They eat food. They spread the sickness. They whisper despair into the ears of the healthy. They are a poison in the heart of this camp." "They are our people," I said. The words felt thin. "They were our people. Now they are liabilities. Think like a soldier, man. You cut off the gangrenous limb to save the body. This is no different." He pointed to the sick tents, their canvas flaps fluttering in the wind. "We go in tonight, quietly. A knife for each one. It will be a mercy. Quick, clean. By morning the camp will be healthier, stronger. The food will last another week. Maybe the Jarl's wagon will come by then." I looked at the tents. I thought of the old man Bjorn. I thought of the woman Aylin's sick child. I thought of Colette singing her death songs. And then I thought of the food stores, of the rioting men, of the Bosmer scaling the walls. I thought of the cold, hard math of survival. He was not a monster. He was a pragmatist. No, that is a lie I told myself. He was a monster, but he was a useful monster. It must be clean, I heard myself say. No witnesses, and Colette, she is not to be harmed. Stenvar's grin widened. It was the most terrible thing I had ever seen. Of course, the healer is an asset. He clapped my back again, a gesture of comradeship. It felt like being branded. I knew you had true Nord blood in you, Roar. I knew it. I walked back to my hut as if in a dream. The world seemed distant, unreal. The sounds of the camp were muffled, as if coming from underwater. I sat on my cot and stared at the rough wooden walls. I had just condemned 40 people to death. I had given an order. I, Roar Smoke Trail, formerly of the Imperial Legion, protector of Karthwasten Crossing. I had sanctioned a slaughter. My hands started to shake. I clenched them into fists until my knuckles were white, but the shaking would not stop. It was not the shivers of the sweats. It was something else. It was the shudder of a soul cracking apart. The screams started just after midnight. They were not loud. They were cut short, muffled gasps, the wet, tearing sound of a blade. I lay on my cot, fully dressed, my eyes wide open in the dark. I did not move. I listened to every sound. I counted them, one after another. A part of me wanted to run out, to stop it, to scream my own denial into the night. But I was frozen. I had made the choice. My body was just catching up to the decision my soul had already made. There was one long, piercing shriek. A woman's voice. It was not Colette. It was someone else. A mother, maybe. The shriek was answered by a heavy, meaty thud, then silence. The silence was worse than the screams. It was a thick, heavy blanket of absolute nothing that settled over the camp. It was the sound of 40 empty spaces where life used to be. The sun rose. I had not slept. I walked out of my hut into the morning light. The camp was still, deathly still. People were huddled in their doorways, their faces pale and terrified. They knew. They did not know how they knew, but they knew. The air itself felt different, thinner, colder. Smoke was rising from behind the sick tents, a thick, greasy smoke that smelled of burnt meat and hair. Stenvar and his men were cleaning up. Attius Varen stumbled toward me, his face the color of old parchment. His robes were stained with vomit. "They are all gone," he whispered, his eyes hollow. Stenvar, he killed them all." "I know," I said. My voice was a croak. I cleared my throat. It was necessary. Attius stared at me. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The man who lived by lists and order had no words for this. He looked at me as if I were a stranger, as if I were a monster. He was right. He turned and stumbled away, back toward his tent of useless numbers. I let him go. He was no longer a factor, he was a ghost. Colette was standing by the smoldering pyre. She was not crying. Her face was a mask of stone. She held a small carved wooden bird in her hand. One of the children must have given it to her. "You let him do it," she said. Her voice was flat, dead. I did. They were sick. They were helpless. They were dying. They were a danger to the rest of us. The words came easily. They were Stenvar's words, but they fit my mouth now. She looked down at the wooden bird in her palm, then slowly closed her fingers around it until her knuckles were white. "There are two kinds of sickness, Hror. One that attacks the body, and one that attacks the soul. I can see now which one is worse." She walked away toward the stream. She did not look back. The day passed in a haze. Stenvar and his men were in charge now. They walked through the camp like kings, their axes on their belts. They distributed the food. The ration was larger today. No one complained. They took their bowls in silence, their eyes downcast. They did not look at the guards. They did not look at me. They ate their food and scurried back to their huts. The fear was gone. In its place was something worse. A dull, placid obedience. The obedience of sheep in a slaughterhouse. The camp was orderly again. It was quiet. It was clean. The sick tents were gone, burned to the ground. The source of the infection had been purged. We had saved the body. We had cut off the gangrenous limb. The logic of it was undeniable. It was a military solution. A problem identified and a problem solved. I repeated this to myself over and over again. It was a chant against the screaming silence in my own head. I did my rounds. I checked the palisade. I inspected the gate. My movements were automatic, the muscle memory of 100 similar patrols in a dozen different war zones. But this was not a war zone. This was a place for healing. I had taken a sanctuary and turned it into a tomb. I am not sure why I am telling you this part. Maybe it is a confession, maybe it is just a report. The facts are the facts. 40 dead, 300 saved. The numbers speak for themselves. Attius would have appreciated the clarity of that evening. Stenvar came to my hut. He brought a bottle of Honningbrew mead. "A drink to celebrate," he said, his voice booming. "Celebrate what?" "Victory. We faced the enemy and we did not flinch. We made the hard choice. That is what leadership is, Hror. Not your imperial paperwork. This," he thumped his chest. "Strength. Will." He poured 2 cups. I took one. The mead was sweet, but it tasted like dust in my mouth. "The people are afraid," I said. "Good." He took a long swallow. "Fear is a tool. It keeps them in line. It makes them grateful for what we give them." He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming in the lamplight. "We have a good thing here. A community. Strong. Pure. We decide who comes in. We decide who is fit to stay. We can build something here. A new kind of hold. Governed by strength, not by the whims of some soft-bellied jarl." I looked at him, at his wild beard and his wilder eyes. He was not just a brute, he was a prophet of some new, terrible creed that was being born in the mud and sickness of this place. And I was his first convert. I was a good man? No. He was a good man. No. That is not right. We were necessary men. The whole thing had gone sideways so fast. I finished my mead. It did not warm me. I felt a coldness inside me that had nothing to do with the night air. It was a permanent cold, a piece of the Skyrim winter that had lodged itself in my heart. "What happens when the food runs out again?" I asked. Stenvar smiled. It was not a pleasant sight. "We will find more. The world outside the wall is full of weak people, full of farms and storehouses. They have what we need. We are strong. They are not. The math is simple." He was right. The math was simple. It was the same math that led to the cleansing of the sick ward. It was the logic of the wolf. I had become a wolf. We all had. The next morning, a scout on the tower shouted. A wagon was coming, not from the direction of Whiterun, but from the west. A small family of refugees, their belongings piled high on a rickety cart pulled by a sway-backed horse. They were flying a white rag from a stick, a sign of peace, a plea for sanctuary. I stood at the gate, Stenvar beside me. His men were lined up behind us, their axes held ready. I could feel their hunger. The hunger for food, yes, but also for something else. A hunger for purpose. A hunger for violence. The family stopped about 50 yards from the gate. It was a man, a woman, and 3 small children. They looked exhausted, terrified. The man stepped forward, his hands raised. "Hello, the camp," he called out, his voice trembling. "We seek shelter. Our village was taken by the Sweats. We have been on the road for a week. Please, in the name of the Divines, help us." A week ago, I would have opened the gate without hesitation. I would have seen them as people in need. I would have offered them food and a place by the fire. I saw something different now. I saw a cart that could be used for hauling wood. I saw a horse that could be butchered for meat. I saw a man and a woman, 2 more sets of hands for labor. I saw 3 children, small and weak, 3 more mouths to feed. A liability. Stenvar looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. He was waiting for my order. I was still the commander of this place, in title if not in spirit. The choice was mine. I looked at the family huddled together in the dust. I looked at the gate, the gouge from the farmer's axe still visible, a splinter, a minor wound. It felt like swallowing a rock made of bad decisions. I thought of my legion oath, to protect the people of the empire. I thought of the Jarl's command, to hold this place against the sickness. I thought of Colette's words, the sickness of the soul. I felt nothing. The space inside me where duty and honor used to be was just a hollow echo. There was only the cold, clear logic of survival, the math of the wolf. The man and woman are strong enough for work, I said to Stenvar, my voice flat and even. The horse will feed us for 3 days. The cart is good wood. I did not need to say what I thought of the children. Stenvar understood. He grinned. And the children? He asked, testing me. I met his gaze. Screen them for the sweats. If they are clean, they can be useful. If not, I left the sentence unfinished. I did not need to finish it. We both knew the answer. We had a pyre that was still warm. He nodded, satisfied. He turned to his men. Open the gate! The heavy bar was lifted. The great wooden doors groaned open. I stood there, watching as the family started forward, their faces filled with a desperate, foolish hope. They thought they had found salvation. They had no idea they were walking into the jaws of the beast. They were just numbers on a new kind of list, assets and liabilities. I performed my duty. I was no longer a protector, I was a harvester. The transformation was complete. The man reached the gate, his eyes shining with tears of gratitude. He tried to thank me. I did not listen to his words. I just looked at the pulse beating in his throat, a steady rhythmic beat, like a drum. It was the only sound I could hear. It was the sound of meat, the sound of survival. I am not sure how much time has passed since then. The days bleed into one another. We have a routine, a new order. Stenvar is the Jarl now, though we do not call him that. He is the strength. I am the hand. I manage the wall, the gate, the daily workings of the camp. Attius is the scribe. He still keeps his lists, but now they are lists of assets, bushels of grain taken from a nearby farm, tools scavenged from a burned-out village. People. Colette is the mender. She tends to the workers' injuries. She does not speak to me anymore. But she does her job. We all do our jobs. Our numbers have grown. We send out raiding parties now. They bring back food, supplies, and new people. The healthy and the strong are put to work. The weak and the sick are processed. We are efficient. We are survivors. We have built something here, just as Stenvar predicted. A holdfast against the dying world. Sometimes at night I walk the top of the palisade. I look out at the darkness. I remember the man I was. The legionnaire who believed in order and duty. He seems like a fool to me now. A boy playing with wooden soldiers. He did not understand the world. He did not understand what people become when they are afraid. I understand. I have learned. This morning a new group arrived at the gate. A detachment of soldiers. They wore the Whiterun Guard's colors. They were led by a captain, a man with a grim face and a tired posture. He hailed the gate. I am Caius Vinius, acting under the authority of Jarl Balgruuf the Greater, he announced. The plague has passed. The roads are clear. We have come to relieve you and dismantle this quarantine. He seemed to expect us to cheer, to throw open the gates in joy. He did not understand. This is not a quarantine camp anymore. It is a nation. Stenvar stood beside me on the watchtower. He looked down at the soldiers. There were 20 of them, a good number. They were well fed. They had steel armor and good weapons. They had 2 wagons of supplies. They are weak, Stenvar murmured, a low growl in his chest. They talk of dismantling. They do not see what we have built. They have come to take it from us, I said. They will try. I looked at the captain. He was waiting for my response. My formal Legion training told me to acknowledge his authority, to follow the Jarl's orders. But the Legion was a ghost. The Jarl was a distant name. The only authority here was the wall, the axe, the hunger in our bellies. I turned to Stenvar. Their armor would be useful, I said, and their weapons. Stenvar's smile was all teeth. My thoughts exactly, Hand. I stepped forward, to the edge of the tower. I raised my hand in a formal Legion salute. It was a gesture of respect. A lie. Captain Vinius, I called down, we welcome you. Open the gate. Let our saviors in. The captain looked relieved. His men relaxed their stances. They thought they were coming home as heroes. They had no idea what they were walking into. The gate groaned open. They marched in, their banner held high. I watched them come. I did not see soldiers. I did not see saviors. I saw resources. I saw meat. I saw a long, hard winter ahead and the means to survive it. The gate closed behind them. The sound was a heavy final thud. Stenvar's men emerged from the huts, axes in hand. The captain's eyes went wide as he realized the trap. He drew his sword. It was too late. It had always been too late. The first scream was his. The taste of power is like the taste of blood. It is metallic and hot. And once you have tasted it, you are thirsty forever.